Commander Elena Rodriguez stood at the observation deck of the ESS Curiosity, watching the unfamiliar stars of the Carina sector shimmer against the void. Humanity's latest deep space exploration vessel had been mapping this region for 3 months, cataloging potential colony worlds and searching for signs of intelligent life. Commander, Lieutenant Wei's voice came through the ship's comm system. We're detecting unusual energy patterns from the KR-247 system. It's different from anything in our database. Elena straightened, her scientific curiosity piqued. Different how? The radiation signature suggests an artificial construct, but it's deteriorating. And there's something else. The entire star system appears to be experiencing accelerated entropy. Plot a course, Lieutenant. Let's take a closer look. As the Curiosity approached the system, the ship's sensors revealed a dying red giant star surrounded by 3 planets. The second planet, despite the harsh conditions, showed signs of civilization. Geometric patterns visible even from orbit. Life signs? Elena asked, studying the holographic display. Yes, but they're. Y paused, recalibrating his instruments. They're pure energy, Commander. The beings down there appear to be composed of structured light and plasma. The science officer, Dr. Sarah Chen, joined them at the bridge. Fascinating. They must have evolved to harness their star's radiation directly. But with their sun dying, she left the implications hanging. Elena made her decision. Prepare a first contact team. Full protective gear and energy shielding. We don't know how these beings might interact with matter-based life forms. The landing party discovered a city of light, crystalline structures that pulsed with internal energy, creating a breathtaking display of colors that danced across the landscape. But the beauty couldn't mask the signs of decline. Many structures showed signs of failing power, their light dimming like dying embers. The inhabitants, the Etheri, as they called themselves, were even more remarkable than the initial scan suggested. They appeared as humanoid figures composed of pure light, their bodies rippling with patterns that seemed to form a language of their own. Through their universal translators, the Etheri's leader, Luminara, explained their situation. Our civilization is millions of years old. We evolved alongside our star, learning to transform its energy into consciousness itself. But now, as our sun dies, so do we. Haven't other spacefaring races offered help? Elena asked, noticing the advanced technology that suggested the Etheri weren't isolated. Luminara's form flickered sadly. Many have come. The Galactic Concordat, the Stellar Assembly, even the ancient Proxons. They studied us, declared our situation regrettably terminal, and left. They said adapting their technology to preserve energy beings would be too costly, too difficult. Dr. Chen was already taking readings with her specialized equipment. Commander, their basic energy pattern. It's not entirely unlike our own fusion technology. With some modifications. Elena held up her hand, her mind racing with possibilities. Luminara, humanity is young compared to other spacefaring races. We don't have the most advanced technology, and we make mistakes. But we're good at finding solutions where others see only problems. If you're willing to trust us, we'd like to try to help. The Etheri leader's form brightened momentarily. You would do this, even though the Concordat has declared our case hopeless. Especially because they declared it hopeless. Elena smiled. Humanity has a long history of proving impossibilities wrong. Within hours, the Curiosity's quantum comm was relaying data back to Earth. Elena stood before the ship's communication array, facing the United Earth Council. The Etheri are a species on the brink of extinction, but their technology, their understanding of energy-matter conversion, it's incredible. Saving them wouldn't just be the right thing to do. It could advance our own science by centuries. Council member Zhang leaned forward. The Galactic Concordat has already warned us not to interfere. They say attempting to preserve the Etheri would violate natural law. Natural law. Elena couldn't keep the edge from her voice. We cured cancer. We reversed climate change. We mastered fusion. Humanity's greatest achievements came from refusing to accept natural law as destiny. There was a long pause before Council President Okafor spoke. The Concordat's warning is noted and rejected. Commander Rodriguez, you have Earth's full support. Whatever resources you need, they're yours. Show the galaxy what humanity can do. As Elena ended the transmission, she looked out at the dying star that had sustained the Aetheri for millions of years. Other civilizations saw a hopeless cause, a tragedy to be documented and filed away. But where they saw an ending, humanity saw a challenge. Dr. Chen, she called over the comm, gather your team. We have work to do. And so began Project Luminescence, humanity's ambitious plan to save a civilization that the galaxy had abandoned. They didn't know if they would succeed, but they knew they had to try. Because that's what humans did. They raged against the dying of the light, no matter whose light it was. Lieutenant Wei watched the first transport ships arrive from Earth, carrying specialized equipment and Earth's brightest minds. Do you really think we can save them, Commander? Elena smiled, watching the Aetheri city pulse with renewed hope. I think we're about to show the galaxy why they should never underestimate humanity's capacity for doing the impossible. The main laboratory aboard the ESS Curiosity had been transformed into what the crew now called the Light Forge. Dr. Sarah Chen stood surrounded by holographic displays showing energy patterns she'd never imagined possible before meeting the Aetheri. It's like trying to catch starlight with your hands, she muttered, manipulating a simulation of Aetheri energy structures. The beam beside her, a young Aetheri scientist named Helios, pulsed with curiosity. Your metaphor is surprisingly accurate, Helios said, his form creating intricate patterns that the translation matrix was learning to interpret as amusement. We are, in essence, conscious light given form through quantum coherence. Sarah nodded, adding another variable to her equations. For 3 weeks, the combined human Aetheri science team had been working to understand how exactly the dying star's changing radiation was affecting the Aetheri's ability to maintain their form. Earth's best minds were streaming data and theories 24/7, but they were racing against time. Dr. Chen, one of her assistants, Dr. Marcus Wong, burst into the lab. The latest readings from the star. The degradation is accelerating. We have 8 months at most before the radiation shifts beyond the Aetheri's survival threshold. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. 8 months to save an entire civilization. She looked at Helios, whose light had dimmed slightly at the news. Then we work faster, she said firmly. Get me a direct link to the quantum computing hub on Luna. We need to run 1 million simulations, and we need to run them yesterday. The next few weeks became a blur of breakthrough and setback. The human scientists discovered that the Aetheri's energy matrix wasn't entirely unlike the plasma containment fields used in Earth's fusion reactors, but trying to adapt that technology to preserve conscious energy beings was like trying to catch a solar flare in a butterfly net. Commander Rodriguez entered the lab one morning to find Sarah asleep at her station, surrounded by failed simulation results. Doctor, she said gently, you need rest. What I need is more time, Sarah replied, straightening up. Or a miracle. She gestured to the latest data streams. We can create a containment field strong enough to preserve their energy pattern, but it won't allow them to maintain consciousness. And if we tune it to allow consciousness, it won't provide enough structural integrity. What about the research team in Mumbai? Elena asked. Didn't they have a theory about quantum consciousness? Dr. Patel's team. Yes, but Sarah stopped mid-sentence, her eyes widening. Wait. Helios, what if we're thinking about this backward? We've been trying to contain your energy pattern, but what if instead we... She rushed to the main console, fingers flying over the controls. The next 12 hours saw the lab transformed into a hive of activity. Dr. Patel's team was brought in via holographic conference, and together they began exploring a radical new approach. Instead of trying to preserve the Aetheri's current form, they would help them evolve. It's risky, Sarah explained to the emergency council meeting. We're talking about using modified quantum field generators to help the ethery transition their consciousness into a new type of energy matrix, one that can sustain itself even with the changing stellar radiation. You're proposing to help them evolve? Council member Zhang asked skeptically. Deliberately alter an alien species' fundamental nature. With their full cooperation and input, Sarah emphasized. The ethery understand their own physics in ways we're just beginning to grasp. Combined with our practical experience in energy manipulation, it's unprecedented. Council President Okafor interrupted. The Galactic Concordat will see this as a violation of their prime directive against species manipulation. They're already dying, Sarah countered, and they're willing to take the risk. The question is, are we willing to help them? The silence that followed was broken by an unexpected voice. A young ethery child had wandered into the transmission field, its light flickering weakly but still beautiful. The council members watched in silence as the child's patterns danced, creating shapes that somehow conveyed both fear and hope. President Okafor's expression softened. How soon can you begin the first trials? The next month was a constant cycle of testing, refinement, and careful experimentation. The first breakthrough came when they successfully helped a volunteer ethery briefly maintain consciousness in a modified energy state. The second came when they figured out how to make the transition permanent. But it wasn't until the first full transformation that they truly understood what they'd achieved. The volunteer, an ethery elder named Solaris, emerged from the quantum field chamber not as a being of pure light, but as something new, a consciousness housed in a matrix of stable energy that rippled with colors no human eye had seen before. How do you feel? Sarah asked anxiously, her instruments recording every detail of the transformation. Solaris's new form pulsed with patterns that the translation matrix interpreted as joy. I feel alive. Different, yes, but alive. You've done it, Dr. Chen. You've given us a future. Sarah didn't try to hide her tears as she sent the confirmation signal to Earth. In less than 4 months, human scientists had done what advanced civilizations had deemed impossible. They had found a way to save the ethery. But as the celebration began in the lab, Lieutenant Wei's voice came over the comm, tense with warning. Commander, multiple Concordat ships just dropped out of FTL. They're demanding we cease all experiments immediately. Elena and Sarah shared a look. They'd won the scientific battle, but the diplomatic war was just beginning. The real fight to save the ethery was about to start. The ESS Curiosity's bridge was tense as 3 Concordat warships loomed on the main view screen. Commander Rodriguez stood firm, facing the holographic projection of High Arbiter Vex Thor, whose crystalline features showed nothing but disdain. Your species' interference in natural selection processes is unacceptable. The Arbiter's voice resonated through the bridge. The ethery's extinction is part of the cosmic order. With respect, Arbiter, Elena replied coolly, humanity has a different view of cosmic order. We believe in making our own destiny and helping others do the same. You will cease these experiments immediately, or what? Elena interrupted. You'll attack an unarmed scientific vessel conducting humanitarian aid. That would make for interesting headlines across the galaxy, wouldn't it? As the standoff continued in orbit, down on the surface, Operation Starlight was already in motion. Dr. Chen had transformed the main ethery civic center into a massive transformation facility. Quantum field generators, shipped in pieces past the Concordat blockade under the guise of basic medical supplies, hummed with power. Another successful transformation. Sarah announced as an ethery family emerged from the chamber, their new energy matrices stable and bright. That's 300 today alone. But it wasn't fast enough. The star's deterioration was accelerating, and they had thousands more ethery to help. Plus, the Concordat blockade was making it increasingly difficult to receive necessary equipment from Earth. We need a new approach, Sarah told her team during an emergency meeting. We can't transform them one small group at a time. We need to think bigger. It was Helios who provided the breakthrough. What if, the HFY scientists suggested, his patterns shifting with excitement, instead of bringing our people to the transformation chambers, we brought the transformation field to all of us at once. The idea was audacious. Create a planetary-scale quantum field that could transform the entire HFY population simultaneously. The energy requirements would be staggering, but humanity had some experience with impossible engineering projects. Back on Earth, factories worked around the clock to manufacture the components needed. Ships disguised as civilian traders slipped past the blockade, carrying pieces of what would become the largest energy manipulation device ever constructed. The Concordat suspected something but couldn't prove it without violating sovereign vessel rights, a line they weren't yet willing to cross. Meanwhile, Alina played a dangerous diplomatic game in orbit. Your blockade is illegal under Section 7 of the Galactic Charter, she informed the Arbiter during their daily confrontations. Preventing humanitarian aid is a serious violation. This is not aid, Vexthor snarled. This is interference with natural law. Your primitive species cannot comprehend the consequences. Perhaps, Alina smiled, but we comprehend compassion. Something your advanced civilization seems to have forgotten. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Marcus Wong, studying the HFY's historical records, discovered something remarkable. Their original transformation, he explained excitedly. When they first evolved from conventional matter to energy beings, it was a natural response to their star's previous phase shift. They'd done this before. Sarah's eyes widened as she reviewed the data. They're not just capable of evolution. They're designed for it. The Concordat wasn't protecting natural law. They were preventing natural adaptation. The evidence was irrefutable. The HFY were meant to change with their star. They had done it before, millions of years ago, and could do it again. They just needed help triggering the transformation with their sun in its current state. As this information spread through subspace channels, public opinion across the galaxy began to shift. Other species started questioning the Concordat's actions. Some even offered covert support to the human effort. Operation Starlight entered its final phase 3 weeks later. A ring of quantum field generators encircled the HFY homeworld, each one precisely calibrated. Sarah stood in the control center, surrounded by both human and HFY scientists, all watching the countdown. Energy synchronization at 98%, Marcus reported. Field stability nominal. In orbit, the Concordat ships made one final threat. If you activate that device, Arbiter Vexthor warned, we will open fire. Alina's response was calm but firm. If you fire on us, every news outlet in the galaxy will broadcast your attack on a peaceful humanitarian mission. The Concordat's reputation would never recover. Are you ready for those consequences, Arbiter? A tense moment passed. Then, slowly, the Concordat weapons powered down. Field synchronization at 100%, Marcus announced. Ready for activation. Sarah looked at Luminara, who had remained with her people instead of transforming early. Are you ready? The HFY leader's light pulsed with determination. We have been ready for this evolution for centuries. We just needed someone brave enough to help us. Sarah nodded and pressed the activation sequence. The quantum field generators hummed to life, creating a shimmering dome of energy that enveloped the entire planet. For a moment, everything seemed to hold its breath. Then, like a sunrise spreading across the world, the transformation began. Every HFY on the planet began to shift, their light changing, evolving, becoming something new yet somehow more true to their original nature. When it was done, the HFY emerged transformed. Their new energy matrices pulsed with stable, self-sustaining power, adapted to their dying star's radiation. They were different, yet unmistakably themselves. And they were going to survive. As celebrations erupted both on the surface and aboard the human ships, Alina sent one final message to the Concordat fleet. Sometimes, Arbiter, the greatest law of nature is change. Remember that the next time you think about standing in its way. The Concordat ships departed silently, but everyone knew this wasn't over. Humanity had just announced its presence on the galactic stage in a way that couldn't be ignored. They had proven themselves to be either a dangerous upstart species or a powerful force for change, depending on who you asked. But as Sarah watched the transformed Etheri celebrate their new beginning, she knew it had been worth it. Sometimes the right thing to do was also the hard thing. And humanity had never been afraid of hard things. The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Concordat resembled a massive amphitheater, with representatives from 1,000 worlds arranged in ascending tiers. Today, for the first time in its history, a human stood at its center. Ambassador Maya Chen, Sarah's mother, faced the assembled alien species with quiet dignity. The humans must be sanctioned. First Speaker Xylax of the Concordat thundered, his crystalline form vibrating with anger. They have violated our most sacred protocols of non-interference. Maya's voice, when she spoke, carried the calm assurance that had made her Earth's most respected diplomat. Before you pass judgment, I request the right to present evidence. Or does the Concordat deny even this basic courtesy? In the galleries above, representatives from dozens of younger spacefaring races watched with intense interest. The Etheri incident had sparked debates across the galaxy about the Concordat's policies of non-intervention. Proceed. Grand Arbiter Kuthal rumbled, their ancient eyes fixed on the small human figure. Maya activated a holographic display, showing the Etheri's historical records. What the Concordat calls interference, we call midwifery. The Etheri were not meant to die. They were meant to evolve, just as they had done before, millions of years ago. The chamber erupted in murmurs as Maya presented Dr. Wong's discoveries about the Etheri's previous transformation. They are a species designed for adaptation. The real interference was not our help. It was your prevention of their natural evolution. Meanwhile, aboard the ESS Curiosity, Commander Rodriguez was hosting an unusual gathering. Representatives from 20 different species, all races that had been deemed too primitive or too unstable by the Concordat, had come to see the transformed Etheri for themselves. Your people did what the Concordat said was impossible. The Nexian ambassador chittered, their insectoid features expressing wonder as they watched Etheri children playing in their new forms. Perhaps they have said many things are impossible that are merely difficult. Back in the council chamber, the debate had turned heated. You speak of evolution, Xylax scoffed, but your real crime is more fundamental. You have shown that the Concordat can be defied, that our wisdom can be questioned. This threatens the very stability of galactic civilization. Maya's response was measured but firm. If your stability depends on letting civilizations die when they could be saved, perhaps it deserves to be threatened. She gestured to a new hologram, showing images from human history. Humanity knows something about facing extinction. We've brought ourselves to the brink more than once, but each time we survived because we refused to accept defeat and because we learned to help each other. The images shifted to show human disasters, rescues, and recoveries. Every time we faced a crisis, there were those who said, "This is natural. This is fate. We should accept it." And every time, there were others who said, "No, we can find a way." In orbit around the Etheri homeworld, Dr. Sarah Chen was documenting an unexpected discovery. The transformed Etheri weren't just surviving, they were thriving. Their new energy matrices were allowing them to perceive and manipulate quantum fields in ways they never could before. It's like they've awakened abilities that were dormant in their original form, she explained to Elena. They're not just adapted to their dying star, they're actually helping to stabilize it. The news reached the council chamber just as Maya was making her final argument. The Concordat speaks of cosmic order, she said, activating the latest data from the Etheri world. Look at this order, a species saved, a star being healed, new knowledge being discovered. Tell me, what part of this offends the universe? Kthal leaned forward, their ancient eyes narrowing. You argue well, human. But there is still the matter of precedent. If we accept your actions, other races will question our guidance. They will demand the right to make their own choices. Maya smiled. Yes, they will. And isn't that exactly what an advanced civilization should want? To help younger races grow, learn, and eventually stand as equals. The chamber erupted in discussion. Among the younger races in the gallery, something was stirring. Hope, ambition, the desire for change. The Concordat representatives could feel their grip on power beginning to slip. Xylax made one final attempt. If we allow this precedent, chaos will follow. Every primitive race will think they can challenge our wisdom. No, Maya corrected. They will know they can seek our help without fear of being abandoned if the solution is difficult. They will know that being part of galactic civilization means more than just following rules. It means working together to overcome challenges. She gestured to the assembled representatives. Humanity doesn't want to overthrow the Concordat. We want to help it evolve, just as we helped the Aethery evolve. Because that's what living things do. They adapt. They grow. They change. In the silence that followed, Grand Arbiter Cathal did something unprecedented. They laughed. The sound echoed through the chamber like distant thunder. Perhaps, they said finally, it is we who have been primitive, clinging to old ways out of fear of change. They raised their ancient hands. I call for a vote, not on sanctions against humanity, but on the creation of a new council, one where younger races can have a voice in shaping our collective future. The vote that followed would be remembered as a turning point in galactic history, not because humanity had defeated the Concordat, but because they had shown there was another way, a way where wisdom didn't mean rigid adherence to rules, but the courage to know when to help others break free of them. As Maya left the chamber, messages were already flowing in from dozens of worlds, seeking Earth's help with problems the Concordat had deemed impossible. A new era of galactic cooperation was beginning. And on a distant world orbiting a dying star, the Aethery continued to dance in their new forms, their light a testament to what was possible when compassion met courage, and when wisdom finally learned to dance with change. 10 years after Operation Starlight, the Aethery homeworld had become a symbol of transformation across the galaxy. Commander Elena Rodriguez, now Admiral Rodriguez, stood on the observation deck of the new Galactic Cooperation Center, watching ships from dozens of species arrive for the decade anniversary celebration. The facility itself was a testament to change, a joint project between humans, Aethery, and 7 other younger species that the Concordat had once dismissed. Its quantum architecture allowed beings of any composition, energy, matter, or hybrid forms, to interact and work together. Hard to believe it's been 10 years, Dr. Sarah Chen said, joining Elena at the window. Now the head of the Interspecies Scientific Exchange, she had overseen dozens of collaborative projects that would have been deemed impossible under the old order. Harder to believe how much has changed, Elena replied, watching an Aethery transport vessel gracefully dance through space, its crew using their evolved abilities to navigate quantum fields directly. The Aethery themselves had become teachers, sharing their unique perspective on energy and consciousness with other species. Their transformed society had discovered ways to communicate across quantum states, developing technologies that revolutionized galactic communications. Below them, in the center's main hall, representatives from over 30 species gathered for the anniversary conference. The agenda was ambitious, exploring new ways to share technology, protect developing civilizations, and face collective challenges. Maya Chen, now serving as Earth's representative on the new Galactic Cooperation Council, took the podium. Age had silvered her hair, but her voice remained strong and clear. 10 years ago, we faced a choice, she began. Accept what we were told was impossible, or try to change it. That choice defined not just humanity's entry into galactic society, but redefined galactic society itself. She gestured to where a group of young Aethery diplomats sat alongside representatives from other species once considered too primitive for full participation in galactic affairs. Look at us now. Not a hierarchy of advanced and primitive species, but a true community of civilizations, each contributing their unique perspectives and abilities. The changes hadn't come easily. The traditionalist faction of the Concordat had initially withdrawn from many joint projects in protest, but they couldn't ignore the results. Breakthrough after breakthrough achieved through cooperation between species at different technological levels. Dr. Wang, now leading the joint research team, presented their latest findings. The A-theory's quantum evolution wasn't a one-time event, he explained. We're discovering similar potential in other species, including humanity. We're all capable of more than we imagine. We just need the right conditions and support to achieve it. The evidence was undeniable. The new approach to interspecies cooperation had accelerated technological and social development across the galaxy. Problems that had seemed insurmountable under the old system were being solved through collaborative efforts. Even some of the elder races had begun to change their perspective. First speaker Xylax, once their fiercest critic, had recently admitted that the human approach had merits. Perhaps, he had said, true wisdom lies not in preserving the old order, but in nurturing the new. As the conference proceeded, Alina received an urgent message from Earth. A newly discovered species in the Carina sector was facing a crisis similar to what the A-theory had faced. The Concordat's traditionalist faction was already arguing for non-intervention. Alina smiled as she read the message. This time, Earth wouldn't be standing alone. The A-theory had already volunteered their expertise, and a dozen other species were offering resources and support. Another impossible situation? Sarah asked, noting Alina's expression. Isn't that humanity's specialty? Alina replied. Besides, impossible just means no one's figured out how to do it yet. Later that evening, as the celebration continued, Alina stood with Luminara, watching the A-theory leader's evolved form shimmer with complex patterns that now conveyed meanings beyond what any translator could capture. Did you know it would turn out like this? Luminara asked. When you first decided to help us. Alina shook her head. We just knew we had to try. Humanity learned long ago that the most important things in life are often the ones everyone else says can't be done. Above them, through the quantum-enhanced viewing field, they could see the A-theory's star. Once dying, it now pulsed with renewed stability, its light strengthened by the combined efforts of evolved A-theory and advanced human technology. It stood as a beacon of what was possible when species worked together. 10 years ago, Alina mused, we thought we were just saving one species. Instead, we helped change the galaxy. No, Luminara corrected, her patterns forming what humans had learned to recognize as a smile. You didn't just change the galaxy. You showed us all how to change ourselves. As if to emphasize her point, a group of young diplomats from various species passed by, deep in discussion about a new joint project. Among them were humans, A-theory, and representatives from species that had once been bitter rivals. The legacy of Operation Starlight wasn't just the salvation of one species or the reformation of galactic politics. It was the proof that compassion, courage, and cooperation could overcome any obstacle, even those that seemed written into the very laws of the universe. And as humanity continued to reach for the stars, they carried with them not just their determination to overcome the impossible, but the knowledge that they would never have to face it alone again. In helping others evolve, they had evolved themselves, becoming part of something greater than they had ever imagined. The light of 1,000 stars shone through the center's windows, each one potentially holding new challenges, new species to meet, new impossibilities to overcome. And humanity, along with their allies old and new, stood ready to face them all. Because that's what humans did. They didn't just survive, they helped others survive too. And in doing so, they turned survival into something more. They turned it into growth, into hope, into a future brighter than any single species could create alone.